So our first speaker for tonight is Mr. Rod Lund. I don't know him that well, but Noah knows him really well.
Well, we went grouse hunting.
We did.
Yes.
And I left you while you were still talking to me. So that's another story. For another day.
Exactly.
But yeah, he's a great guy, and he's going to give us some great principles and such to live by. So,
all right.
Without further ado, here's Rod. I'm just going to turn that off so it's not distracting behind that.
Thank you. All right. Good to see everybody tonight. Daniel, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good to see you. I haven't seen you since grouse hunting, right?
It's been too long.
Oh, there you go.
Still haven't had that much fun yet.
Lots of people here. Good. That's good. All right. Well, let me open up in prayer, and then I'll get started, and we'll see what the Lord has for us tonight. Gracious Heavenly Father, we want to thank you so much for this evening, for all the people that have come out. We pray your hand upon each one of us and guide us by your Spirit. Help us to understand how we should live and how we should honor and serve you. And may the things that I have to share, may you use them for your glory. I pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. How many of you young people, I think that's what Noah told me, mostly young people, but how many of you have thought about your journey in life? What's your life's journey? Noah, you got something. I want to hear something. What's your life journey? Do you have something you want to share?
No, I don't have anything planned today.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah.
I want to start a business.
You want to start a business?
Yeah, I want to start a business that goes into the fencing industry.
Fencing industry. You don't mean like this, do you? Okay, just checking. All right.
I'm not too good at fighting you.
Well, good. That's good. Hopefully you'll get some advice here tonight with all the people speaking.
That's pretty strong.
So if I came up and I had a suitcase and I had $1 million and I gave it to you, what would you do with it? And I want some participation here. What would you do with $1 million?
Invest it.
You would invest it. Okay. Anything special?
Real estate, stock market.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm thinking percentages, like Chris talks about.
Percentages.
So give, invest in a business, things like that.
Good deal. Okay. Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Maybe buy a house.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, Dad.
Good to see you.
Good too.
It's always good to see my son. Okay. Well, there's a number of things you could do with $1 million, but if it was dumped in your lap immediately, you'd probably freak out. What am I going to do with all this money? What could I do with it? Anyway, people that have a lot of money don't really know. Some people that have a lot of money don't really know how to use it. And actually, money is a tool. And if we can use it for the glory of God, that's great. And that's what it should be. Because we're basically on this earth for about 70 years, plus or minus. And how do we live these 70 years that we're here? Do we make everything nice for us? Nice house, nice this, nice that? What do we do with our money? And I want to tell you, and I've told all my sons this, life is not fair. So plan on it. Plan on life not being fair. Somebody's starting a fencing company, he's going to run into some issues. Life is not fair. But we keep moving. We keep moving ahead. As Christians, do we follow the world's way or do we follow God's way? Something to think about. Because we're bombarded every single day by the things of the world. And so do we get accustomed to that? Or do we go to the scriptures and do we find out what we're supposed to be doing according to God's word? Those are thoughts that we should have. Or do we fly by the seat of our pants and just wing it? And hopefully not. I got a friend. His name is Jimmy Costello. And interesting story. Maybe I'll share that. I had a stockbroker came to me. I invested just a little because I didn't know him. What?
He cold called you.
Yeah, he cold called me. Anyway, I talked to him, and he was having some medical issues. Shared the Lord with him. Shared some other things, and all said and done, he was basically dying of liver cancer. Was it liver cancer, Rox? That's what it was. Okay, cirrhosis. So we were sitting at home, and Roxanne said, "Let's just go visit him." I said, "What are you talking about? I don't even know what this guy looks like." So the Lord prompted her. We jumped in the car. We went to visit him, and we called his friend up, Jimmy, and he kind of reluctantly but opened his house up to us, and we've been friends ever since. When we got there at his house, we talked for hours and hours, just sharing the Lord back and forth. What a wonderful picture that was. But his testimony is, this guy worked for the Chicago Board of Trades. He made 6 figures, okay? This shows you worldliness. He made 6 figures. And what he would do is, after he made enough money, he would just shut down, and he'd go out and live on the streets. And what's that? On drugs, yeah, drugs, all kinds of stuff. And he had this beautiful condominium. That's where we stayed. And so it shows you the impact that the world has on us. And we have to guard ourselves from that. And if we don't guard ourselves from that, we'll just follow into what the world says. So anyway, I wanted to share that. He lost his place. He lived out in the streets. Finally, the Lord got a hold of him. And he's beyond me. He's incredible. He knows the scriptures back and forth. I can text him and say, "Where's this found?" And he'll just give it to me like that. So those are things that the Lord can do for us, and we are thankful for that. Okay, how do we start life's journey in stewardship? So what is the definition of stewardship? Does anybody know what the definition of stewardship is? Yes.
The manager of God's money.
Very good, very good. That's great. I pulled out my Funkin' Wagnall dictionary. I looked it up. It says, one who is entrusted with the management of property, finances, or any affair not his own. And I was thinking about that, and that includes time as well. What do you use your time for? So we need to use our time wisely. So I'm going to begin with John 3, and I'm going to read a few scriptures in here. And you'll think, what does that have to do with financing? Well, it has a lot to do with financing. John 3. Okay, here we go. There was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. The same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles that thou doest except God be with him. Jesus answered and said unto him, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus said unto him, How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? Jesus said, Verily, verily, I say to thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh. That which is born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I say that thee must be born again. The wind bloweth where it list, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but cannot tell whence it comes and whence it goes. So is everyone that is born of the Spirit. Nicodemus answered and said unto him, how can these things be? Jesus answered and said unto him, art thou the master of Israel, and knowest not these things? Verily, verily, I say unto thee, we speak that we do know, and testify that we have seen, and ye receive not our witness? If I have told you earthly things, and you believe not, how shall ye believe if I tell you of heavenly things? So, this is really the place to start. If we are going to live for the Lord each and every day, even with our finances and all that we do, it needs to start there. We need to be transformed. From flesh to spirit. In 1 Thessalonians 5, Joel, you're late. 1 Thessalonians 5:23. We're spirit, we're soul, and we're body. These three things. So the body is physical. If I took Joel's thumb and stuck it up here and hit it with a hammer, he'd probably say, ouch. We're physical, okay? We're also our soul. It's our wants and needs. If I go to a Christmas party and they have 5 different pies there, I'm going to want one of those pies, especially if Roxanne makes it. So, anyway, that's the soul. And then the spirit, we each have a spirit. The spirit is quiet. It doesn't make loud noises, and you have to be gentle to hear it. And the spirit will fight against the soul. So you've got that battle, that's the flesh and the spirit. But we are to be spiritual beings, and we are to walk in the spirit. Matthew 6:33 says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto us. So we seek those things that God wants. And he will add those things to us. I have a few stories I'll share with you. So as born-again believers, 1 Corinthians 7:23 says that we are bought with a price. So here's the picture. If you are bought with a price, you now relinquish your fleshly desires, and you turn them over to Christ in the spiritual realm. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. I can tell you this, and you can say, well, that's hard. Yeah, it is hard. It takes time. It takes a long time. But that's where we want to be. And if we can do that, we can follow what Christ has for us. So if we're not born again, then everything we're doing is worldly, okay? Now, we can be successfully worldly. There's a lot of successful people that are worldly. But as Christians, we want to follow what Christ says so that we are not following the things of the world. And I'm going to share a couple things, down the way a little bit. So I was looking in the scripture about God works out of the box. We look at Joseph. Now, Joseph was second in command of the whole world in Egypt. So here was his schooling. First, he had a dream, and he told all his brothers, "You're going to bow down to me." Probably not the right thing to say at that time, but that's what he said. Probably excited, a young guy excited about, hey, I had a dream. You know what I had, you guys? This is what happened. You guys are going to bow down to me. Isn't that great? They probably didn't like that. And then the next thing, they want to murder him, okay? So they want to kill him. The next thing, they decide not to kill him, and they say, we're going to sell him into slavery. So they sell him into slavery. And then after that, Potiphar picks him up and he has him in his house, and his wife accuses him of things that aren't right, and he gets thrown in prison. And can you imagine? Now what am I going to do? Here I am in prison. And he must be calling out to God, God, this is not working. All these things, murder, thrown into prison, all this stuff. And then after that, the baker doesn't tell the king that he can read dreams. So you have those things happening. You go through those tests to man. How many want to sign up for that? So what I'm trying to tell you is that we don't know our journey. We can plan it, but we don't know our journey. That's in the Lord's hands. And he likes it when we come to him and say, hey, Lord, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to do that. He's not offended by that. So I'm going to give you a couple examples that have happened to me. I have a lot of them, but I'm not going to share a lot of them. I don't want to. There's no credit to me. Credit goes to the Lord. So I'm just going to share a couple of them. And I'm going to share the worst one first. So when I was younger and I started out my business, I built one house and then I was going to build another one. And I was going to build a house in Olympic Hills Golf Course. It's kind of a high-end place in Eden Prairie. So I buy 2 lots. I'm building this house. And I'm dreaming of my red Cadillac. Gotta get that red Cadillac. And so all the things there I did wrong. I got sued, almost lost my shirt, my family, the whole 9 yards. Went through the test, just like Joseph, the test. And sometimes we have to go through those. We don't like them, but sometimes we have to go through those tests. So then after that, court was not fun. I didn't like that. That's really a nerve-wracking place to be. Anyway, we'll stop with that one. Now I'll go on to one that was incredible. This is what the Lord did. So what I'm trying to show you and to share with you, that God has his hand in our daily lives. And if we just trust him and believe him, just like Joseph, who, if you would have told him, you're going to go through all these things, you're not going to Harvard or anything, you're going through all these other things, and then I'll put you second in command. And then in Psalms 50, verse 10, it says, the Lord owns everything. He owns everything. So if we get that in our head, he owns everything, then we can rest. We can rest assured that we don't have to fret, we don't have to worry, we don't have to whatever. If he's in charge, if we are truly born again, transformed believers, he's in charge, then we can rest in that. So here's what happened. Matt, I hope you don't mind, I'm going to bring you up. So when Matt was younger, we lived in Richfield, and there were 3 black girls that beat Matt up. He was defending, we were ministering to a young man, and he was defending him, and they got carried away. I can't remember. But we had the police come in. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? And they said, well, we're not doing anything. I said, well, don't you do something when this happens? Nope. So I'm paraphrasing, but so then I decided that we would move. We're moving. We're getting out of this town. We lived in Richfield. So we put our house up for sale and so on and so forth. And then this particular property came available because of a sheriff's sale. This is out in, this is in Kingston. This is where I live right now. And so this property came available through the sheriff's sale. My father was working on it. This is the beauty of the Lord. You don't have to get out there and he just lays it in your hand. Don't be silly and just sit there, but you have to participate. But my dad and this guy were talking, and they said, I tell you what, you go ahead and buy it, and then just give us a few acres. So that's what happened. So this guy bought it, and he could have shafted us. He could have said, "No, I ain't doing that now." But he didn't. So we bought 20 acres for $6,000, okay? And then we had the DNR come in. They wrote us a letter, and they said, "We will pay you $6,000 if you let us put some ponds on your property." And, of course, I said, "Sure. I like ponds. Joel likes to duck hunt. Davey likes to duck hunt." So we did that. And we have 20 acres, and we built our house on it. And that's where we live now. We've been there about 30 years. So you can see how God works in your life. And if we get serious, if we truly get serious, not Sunday going to church people, but if we get serious and have intimacy with Christ, you will see him do things that will just blow you away. And that's the exciting part of the Christian life. It's an amazing life to live. Okay? So, a little more with finances. I have one of my sons who wanted to build a twin home. He was talking to me, and we were going through stuff, and we were trying to figure this and that and the other thing out. And I said, "Okay, so you want to do this?" Well, first he wanted to build just a house. And I said, "Well, let's build a twin home. Because then your renters on one side will help pay for your house." And so he did that. He said I could share this. So he got a mortgage for $1,800 a month. And the people that rent on one side are paying $1,500 a month. So the math guy knows this. So he's paying $300 to live in a brand new house. Okay? So God works outside of the box, and we have to remember that. So if the mortgage company says, "Well, you got to do this, you got to do that," we got to start thinking outside of the box. Sometimes it takes a while, and the reason being is because we're immature. We're immature. We really don't know, and we need the Lord to direct us. And he might hit us on the head a few times with a 2x4, but when we get it, he's gracious to show us and to allow us to do what we desire. Okay? So my advice to you is choose good friends. Choose good friends. And choose them carefully. I try to choose friends that are more spiritual than I am, because then I can learn. I can learn a lot. I can bounce things off of them. I can ask them, "Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that?" You know, iron sharpens iron. Okay? If God blesses you materially, don't brag about it. Don't go out and say, "Yeah, look what I did." No. If we go to Hezekiah in Isaiah 39, he was ill, and the prophet came to him, and he said, "You're going to die." Don't you love to hear that kind of stuff? "Hey, you're going to die." Anyway, he pleaded with the Lord, and the Lord gave him another 15 years. So he was able to live another 15 years. And he had some friends that, I'm not saying they're friends, excuse me. He had some people from other countries that came and wanted to visit with him. They brought gifts and so forth. So Hezekiah took them in, and of course, what does he do? He shows them all the wealth that he has. "See, I got this, I got this, I got this," and so forth. And the prophet asked him, "What'd you tell the guys?" "Well, I told them about all the stuff I have." He says, "You're going to lose all that stuff. It's going to be gone. It's going to be gone. And not in your lifetime, but in the next lifetime." So it's between you and the Lord. People don't need to know how much money you make or how little money you make. It's not their business, okay? It's just between you and the Lord. Try to make other people successful. That's a good goal, to make other people successful. I had a friend, Jerry C. Hughes, and we used to go to church with him, and he would always try to find somebody that could help somebody else out, no matter what it was. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But make other people successful, okay? Don't compare yourself with other people. Don't look at somebody and say, oh, look what they're doing. Oh, wow. I wish. Then you're coveting. And what is covetousness? It's a sin that was very rarely talked about. You're coveting what somebody else has. Don't compare yourself with anybody else. It's between you and the Lord. It's not between other people. And there's no reason to bring that up. Okay, here's one you might not like. Maybe you will. Get a credit card, okay? And buy your gas on the credit card. Nothing else. If you can't do it, then don't get a credit card. But just put your gas on every month, and that will help you establish credit to purchase a house. A house, gets a mortgage. It's not consumer debt. Consumer debt, you got to watch what that is, and the finance guy will tell us about that. Okay? Don't be stingy. It's easy to be stingy. And I was probably stingy for many years due to the fact that Roxanne and I went through a real tough time, okay? We had nothing. I mean, we had a house, but we couldn't hardly afford it. So, but as God blesses you, don't be stingy. Share what you have. Share what you have with others, okay? John Wesley has something, and I'll just share a couple things because I know my time is kind of running out here, but he has a recipe for finances. Gain all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. And there's some more stuff in there, but I don't have time for that. And the best place to start a business is when you're living at home. Because if you fail, you're not going to be in the street, okay? So if you're a young person, you pray about it, you seek the Lord, you try to do what He desires that you should do. That's the time to start a business. Because if you fall, your family will still be there, okay? And count the cost. Make sure you count the cost. What is it going to cost? Whatever I'm doing. If you're doing fencing, what is it going to cost? If you're doing building, what is it going to cost? Get the cost so you know what's going on. What does the scriptures say? A wise man counts the cost before he starts building. That's what you need to do. Okay, a couple of Psalms here, a Psalm and a Proverb. Let's see if I can get this quickly. 37, okay. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in His ways. Okay? The steps of a good man. And then Proverbs 16:9. Oops, he's too far. Okay, Proverbs 16:9. A man's heart deviseth his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. So back to our situation, moving out to where we live now. If those girls wouldn't have beat Matt up, he didn't have a black eye or anything like that. It wasn't that bad. Yeah, okay, just a slap in the face.
They didn't beat him.
Can you show us how? No, I'm kidding. So, do you see how I can see how the Lord directed us? Because of that situation and because of this coming up, this is where we moved, and we are so blessed where we're at. We use our house for hospitality. As we get older, it's a little harder, but people were there all the time. It was a revolving door. And that's a good thing. So anyway. So in conclusion, Ecclesiastes says, 12, 13, and 14, fear God, okay, and keep his commandments, all right? And then Mark 12, 30, and 31, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. And thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So keep those things in mind, all right? So if road rage happens, just let it go. It's no big deal. Just let it go.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Saúl Cuevas. I'm 38 years old. I'm originally from Mexico, and maybe you're wondering, okay, how did I end up in Willmar, Minnesota, from all the places in the U.S.? I work at a Bible camp in Story City, Iowa, which is also a very small town in Iowa. And I met my wife there. She was working at that Bible camp at the time, and then she grew up in Blomkest, and I have a cool story, and I didn't give you a heads up, but I don't think you will mind that I share in this story. But the first time that I met Chris, he was probably like this height. It was 14 years ago. I was visiting Peter and Carrie Statham. They live in a farm in Blomkest, and my first memory of Chris was I was visiting, and then it was December, I think. There was a lot of snow. And I looked through the window, and I see this little kid just, like, standing by the door. I was like, what is he doing? Why is he just, like, standing there? And so eventually I told Carrie, like, hey, like, can we go and help him? Like, I don't know, like, what's going on? I didn't know him. And then, I think I can't remember if I wanted to talk to you or someone did. And I was like, he's just asking for a shovel. I'm like, what? So I'm like super confused, and they gave him a shovel, and he started like shoveling the snow, right? And I guess that was something that, I don't know if Susan or someone, I think part of what they did was like, hey, go and do like an act of service to a neighbor, and that's what he was doing, right? I remember being like so impressed. I was like, wow, I've never seen something like that. And now fast forward 14 years later, I see Chris, and he's like, well, he's looking for ways to serve others right now, right? As he's putting this together along with Noah, and just very encouraging for me, and a huge shout out for Susan and Kelvin, and just raising your kids in a way that they're serving others. So I thought that was pretty cool, and very excited to be able to share with you. So I don't know if Chris mentioned this, but I'm let me see here. All right, so I'm an accountant. I did accounting for a little bit of over 10 years. And then recently I switched to more like IT. I'm helping implementing a software right now. But I love numbers. And Chris asked me to share a little bit more about that with you guys, a little bit more in detail. I want to talk more about this. I know Rod already covered like the definition of what a good steward is. I just went online and says someone who responsibly manages and oversees resources entrusted to them with the understanding that these resources ultimately belong to someone else, in the biblical context, to God. So being a good steward involves using these resources wisely, ethically, and efficiently to accomplish the purpose for which they were given. And maybe I'm going to go on, a lot of my presentation is going to be emphasizing more this last part. How can we do it efficiently in a way that is easy to keep track of some of these expenses or things that we want to accomplish, right? So a couple of verses, I know Rod already covered some of those, but in 1 Corinthians 4:2, it says, moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found trustworthy. Luke 16:11 says, so if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? So after we read some of these verses, I guess the question I would have for everyone is, are you being a good steward? Let's say, yeah, and Exactly. And I think if you are here tonight, like maybe you already have the answer for that. And I would say, how would you be able, like if someone were to come and ask you right now, are you being a good steward? What would you say? Maybe you would say, yeah, I think I am, or maybe I'm in the process. And I want to share a story. When, for the first year of working as an accountant, I still remember this day, I was driving back from work and I was all happy because I was like, hey, this the first time I've had, like a whole year after like having like, you could say a real job, making more money. I was still living with my parents, so not a lot of expenses, making more money than ever I did before. And I still remember thinking, okay, well, this is how much I have in my savings account, and this is how much I've made in the year, right? And I was like, okay, what happened to the money, right? And I remember being like super frustrated. I think I was waiting for like a red light. It was in the big city. I live in a big city in Mexico, so I had a lot of time to think. And I'd be like, okay, well, I bought this other thing, but I just couldn't really respond to that, right? And I remember being like so frustrated because I was like, okay, this is what I do for a living. I make financial statements for another company. I keep track with a lot of detail the finances of someone else, but I cannot keep track of my own finances. And someone is asking me this, and I have no idea how to respond to that, right? So I don't know if you can relate to that with me or not. Again, I'm a numbers guy. If you tell me like, hey, how are you doing? And are you being a good steward? And you say, yes, I am. And we're like, well, prove it. Like, show me data, right? Like, don't just say, well, I think I'm doing well. So I just found this online and says, well, how much does the average person spend on financial planning and management every week? And you guys are going to be like blown away with this stat. It says the average American spends only about 2 minutes per day on financial planning and management, which translates to roughly 14 minutes per week, as most people spend very little to no time actively managing their finances on a daily basis. When I look around this room, I see people that are hard workers, right? You're probably working more than 40 hours a week. And would you say like, okay, is it wise that I'm spending potentially more than 40 hours a week working away from your family, and then how much time are you spending on managing the result of that effort, right? And to be honest, like it's hard, like sometimes to have like that discipline to be faithful in spending the time, right? Along with that stat, I got another one that says the average American spends 4 hours and 37 minutes looking at their phone every day. That quickly adds up over time to about 1 day every week, 6 days every month, and 70 days every year. So there's really no excuse, right? Like it's not like we need so much time, like to be able to manage our finances, just having the discipline to do it, ideally on a weekly basis. So I'm going to touch base on 2 points. So what is expense tracking? So just 3 points here. It's recording and monitoring actual spending. Looks at past spending to track financial behavior. And this last one is probably the most important. Identify areas of overspending. I would ask here in the room, is anyone using like any specific apps maybe to like track your finances? Maybe you want to share what are some of those apps that maybe you're using? Yep.
I use Expenses Go. I heard it from Chris.
Which one?
Expenses Go.
Expenses Go, is that an app? Okay. Like, do you do it like mostly on your phone or like a computer? Okay.
It's on my phone. I make a purchase. It comes up as a widget, and I just punch it in.
All right, great. Anyone else in the room here using like any other apps? Nope. Okay. Do you have a budget on that one, or is it just expense tracking?
It's just expense tracking.
Okay. Yeah, and that's totally fine. I think the reason why I wanted to mention this because many times there's a confusion between, okay, what is expense tracking and budgeting? So expense tracking is just literally just keeping track of all your transactions. And then the next one, budgeting, is more as the slide says here, setting limits on expense categories, like looking more like towards the future. Okay, how much do I want to spend on a specific category, right? And to be honest, I've never really had much of a budget because like I think the strategy was like save as much as you can, right? That was a strategy, right? And if you have that strategy, potentially you don't even need a budget, right? Because it's more like, hey, if I don't need it, I'm gonna buy it. I'm just gonna keep track of the expenses just to make sure that I'm not overspending anywhere. Working on a budget takes time, right? You need to be thinking about all these different categories, how much you want to allocate there. Then you need to keep track with okay, how much actuals versus budget. So for many people, it gets so overwhelming. It's I'm not even going to try it. Who has the time to do that? Well, what I say, at least start by tracking your expenses, right? And that's the part that I'm going to dive in more with something I'm going to show in a second. So who likes Excel or works in Excel here in the room? No? So raise your hand if you have worked with Excel before. Okay, so I see a few hands over there. No? Okay, it's a great tool. If you don't use it, I would recommend. There's so many tutorials. YouTube, you can pretty much learn Excel there. And that's kind of what I do for a living. I probably spend 70% of my time working in Excel. So I just want to show here with you guys, and I apologize, hopefully I'm not between here and the screen, but this is a template that I created in Excel to track my own expenses. And again, when I started using it, it was so tedious because it was so manual. And I literally had to enter each amount, and then it would take me hours, right? And then the more I started working on it, I developed ways to automate this template that I created. And especially these days, there are so many ways that you can easily export data. So let's say, I would imagine most of you have a bank account, and there's online banking, right? So you can go to your bank account or to the website of your bank. And I would say most banks give you the option of exporting data into Excel. You can say, hey, I want to see all my transactions for the last few months, or depending on the bank you have, you can even go years back, right? So ideally, the part that gets overwhelming with, I would say, accounting or expense tracking is if you wait too long. All of you guys probably have experience working on your taxes, right? What happens when you don't work on your taxes the whole year, and then maybe a few days before they're due, you're trying to put everything together because it's super stressful, right? But what happens when you have everything organized and you spend maybe, a couple hours every month, right? When the time comes, it's not as painful, right? So I would say it's exactly the same thing. If you do a few hours every month, it's not as painful as this might look, right? And especially if you can find ways that you can automate it, that's the way to go. So I'm just going to show here, again, something that I did. You probably cannot see the data. It's kind of small, and that's fine. I just want to show part of the automation that I'm talking about, which is I have these two tabs over here, and this one that says transactions. It's basically data that I'm exporting from a website from a bank. And the only thing that I'm working on is on this thing that's called category. Those are categories that I created that are specific to what I want to track. And then the amounts, obviously, those are coming from my bank account. Here are the different accounts that I have. And I'm actually using an app called, what's the name of the app that we're using?
Empower.
Empower, right? Yep. So there's these apps that consolidates all your different bank accounts, credit cards. So instead of having to go to all the different websites of your different bank accounts, you can only go to one, consolidates everything, export it into Excel, copy paste in here. And I want to show you something, guys. So here, sure what's going on here. All right. So as you can see here, I have the categories that I had mentioned before. Revenue. I'm going to make it a bit bigger so you can see it. And all the different expenses that I have. So you can see the different months. And the automation that I'm talking about is, you can see right now here, there's nothing in April, right? If you are able to develop a solid Excel file, I'm just going to demonstrate, like as I was showing, there was nothing in April. Let's say you go to your bank account, export it into Excel, copy paste
CVS file that you
CVS file, and then you transfer it into Excel. Copy paste here, you work on categorizing your transactions. So everything you're doing is literally just being like, okay, I want to assign this category for this expense. So everything you're working is on this. And then if I go back to my summary, do you guys see how the data is here now? Pulling automatically. So it's not like I had to like go manually and do that, right? And the cool thing about this is that you can build it however you want it, right? Here, I have like you could say the main categories, but then you can build it in a way that you can have subcategories and really get like very detailed, right? So, like, again, this is just sample data, right? But like for giving, for instance, we like to do like, okay, local church, missionaries, other giving. Then when you go to like groceries and home supplies, and you can break it as much as however you want, right? I would recommend not being so general that is like, okay, home expenses, and then you see like this big number, right? And you're like, well, I cannot even explain, like, if you try to correct something, it's like, well, it's so general, right, that you cannot even do anything with it. But you don't want to break it down by like 20 different little categories that is like, okay, well, it is so complicated, right? Like when you go through the process of categorizing, right? As Chris mentioned, and I think someone back there mentioned something about percentages, I would say the value that I see, you might say, well, why are you putting like so much effort into trying to get like so detailed, right, with a spreadsheet like this? And I would say all that effort is for this part over here. I think someone said percent back there. So the cool thing about like this automation is like it just gives you percentages, right? And you can say, okay, for my total money that I made, this is truly how much I'm spending, like how much is going to like each one of the categories, right?
And you could even have that pulled up in the graph too on Excel.
Yeah, and like you can do whatever you want to do with this data. You know what is the other like super cool thing about this? Once you put all that effort, as you can see here, once you're done with a year, you copy that, and as you can see here, I have like 2023. I don't have any data showing here, but it's ongoing, right? So I think I've been doing this like since 2016, and in just like one simple screen, you can see like all your finances from like the past 8 years summarized in different type of categories and looking at percentages. There's this quote from Billy Graham that says, "Give me 5 minutes with a person's checkbook, and I will tell you where their heart is." I would say maybe maybe we're not using checkbooks that much anymore, right? But I would say, give me like maybe a couple hours to look at someone's spreadsheet or like bank account transactions, and I will tell you where their heart is, right? Going back to my story at the beginning of when I started talking, I think we have this tendency to say, yeah, I'm not doing that bad, right? I think I'm putting God first, right? And then if you were able to have something like this where you actually have percentages, then it's not more like, oh, I have a gut feeling that I'm doing fine, right? It's more like, okay, what are the numbers showing, right? If you go back here to the percentages and then you see that you're giving the percentages like this, right? And then on your personal expenses category, the percentage is super high. But then you're saying, yeah, like God is the most important thing in my life. Like I want to put God first, right? The reality is that you're not doing it. So I would say, again, it might seem overwhelming. It might seem like there's a lot of work into it, but I think it's truly valuable. I wrote this here. It says, tracking your expenses isn't just about being financially responsible or saving more money. It's about keeping your heart in check and staying accountable to God. Prioritizing what truly matters most, right? So one of the reasons why I like doing this again is it's a way to keep myself accountable, right, to what God has entrusted to me. And when I go and put the numbers here and I can see it, it's like, okay, am I being a good steward? Am I truly putting God first? Am I showing that? Do I really mean it, right, in the way that I'm living? And just to finish here, I have an image here that I like to show. And I think Chris and I think Nathaniel, you guys are into aviation, right? So what is this thing called that you see here on the screen? Like the...
A heads-up display.
What is what?
Well, which part of that?
Like this area over here. The cockpit, or I think it's called like instruments or something like
Panel, yeah.
instrument panel, right? So, and again, I was going to make an attempt to try to talk more about it. I was like, maybe I should let like an expert talk about that. But my understanding is that you can fly maybe potentially with just looking through like the window, like what you can see, right? But eventually, if you want to take like a long trip, you need to know how to fly with instruments, right? Otherwise, if you get yourself caught like in a storm, the chances that you could make it are very minimal, right? So I would say taking a hold of your finances and managing is like having these instruments, right? And as you were saying, I like what you said, like life is not fair. And you can almost expect that things won't go the way you want it, right? And the best way to do it is being prepared, right? By knowing what you're spending, so then if things get rough, you can go really quick to your instruments, to like your expense tracking, and be like, okay, where are the areas where I can easily cut money, right? Because you already have all that data from previous years, right? Rather than being like, okay, you're really, really operating blinded, right? Like you're like, okay, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't even know where to start, right? So I know that we'll be talking about some scenarios in the at the end of the this time, and I would highly recommend, as I started saying, if you guys don't have an app or something, just find a way to do it, right? It's really worth it, and I think it brought a lot of peace of mind for me to actually be able to see it rather than to kind of guess, right? Am I being a good steward with what God has given me? But yeah, I think that's everything I have. And
Next speaker is Warren Yutzi. Thank you, Saúl, for ending. And we'll try to get through to the Q&A. Warren's a good friend of Ambrose. He drove 4 hours from Wisconsin. Not quite as far as Nathaniel, but he holds the second highest record. So we're just going to get you mic'd up here, and then I can plug you have a computer too?
I'm not going to use it.
You're not going to use it? Okay.
No notes. Well, this is great. You guys are getting together to talk about money. Something that I think as Christians sometimes we're really shy about. But does anybody have a guess of the number one topic that Jesus talked about in the Bible? It was money. 11 out of the 39 parables that Jesus spoke about, he used money. And so that is something that, maybe we shy away from because we see people bragging about how much money they make, or we have a kind of a negative connection to talking about money. But at the start of the day, when I got up this morning, I had energy and health, right? I'm very thankful for that. What am I going to do with that? I'm going to use it to work hard and smart. So God trusted us with oxygen that he gave us when he created us, and then we can determine what we're going to do with that. And so we talked a lot about saving money tonight. I've learned a lot. This is awesome. But then we also talk about about making money and making more money and getting the most out of our time. Most of you probably don't know me. I met Chris one time. I think I met Abel once or twice. I've met Ruben a few times. But my name is Warren, and I'm from Sparta, Wisconsin. I see some of you wearing camo. Who here has heard of Matthews Bows, right? They're made in Sparta, Wisconsin. So I drive by their factory almost every single day. Our warehouse for our business is about a block from there. That gives you a little idea of where they're at, about 4 hours from here. But anyway, something about the Matthews company that I will never forget. One time I went to a fundraiser, and there was this guy by the name of Matthew McPherson up front. I had no clue who he was. And he was giving away bows to adopted kids in the area. And years later, I found out that was the owner and founder of the Matthews Company. And I never forgot that. I was probably 12 years old when I saw that. So you never know who's watching and what inspiration you might have. But my wife's name is Lorna. We've been married for 10 years and business partners for 10 years. We own a commercial roofing company. And we have a young guy in our life that God gave to us. His name is Micah. And we adopted him this past March. He's 4 years old. Micah lived in 8 foster homes before he came to live with us. It's not something that we pursued. It was literally thrown into our lap. And man, it's been a blessing. It has totally changed the way I look at my life and at finances. But give you a backstory. I was born in 1994 into an Amish home. So I don't know if any of you know Amish, but my parents were Amish when I was born. And growing up, my dad worked extremely hard. But Amish have this mindset that too much money is not good. So they actually watch your finances, and they put certain rules in place in your church so that you can't make significant amounts of money. So they'll limit how many cows you can milk and how many horsepower your tractor is. And so this almost created a negative mindset. But what I saw was my dad saving every single penny he could, no matter what. My dad had a roofing company, and he was doing roofing before I was born. But when I was about 5 years old, my dad bought a dairy farm, and there was 6 of us boys. And so Dad wanted to do something that all of us could work together on. So we did that for a number of years. And then when I was 10 years old, our family chose to leave the Amish culture, and which I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision. But my parents became saved, and so there was another way to heaven besides being Amish. And so 10 years old, we left, and Dad wanted to get back into commercial roofing. So I was probably 12 or 13. My dad brought home these 2 big boxes, and there was a computer in there. One was a screen, and one was the computer. And we got it out, we plugged it in, and nobody in the whole family knew how to use it. But Dad wanted to do his roof quotes on the computer. So I had a friend from church come over, and none of my other brothers were interested, but I was so fascinated by this thing. And we didn't use Excel, but we had something. It must have been Microsoft Word or something that he pulled up. And within the first year of using that, I learned how to use these programs, just what he was showing. And my number one point that I'll make tonight is put your finances on paper. I don't care to what extent. I don't care if it's a notepad. Somehow get your numbers on paper. But my dad didn't know how to use the computer, so I got to break down every job. I got to see the materials, the labor, the overhead, and the profit. Before, I thought it was just all profit. When Dad sold a $30,000 job, I sure thought he made $30,000. But at 13 years old, I got to see how to break down a budget for a project and to make sure there's money left. And I kind of have this concept now that I knew about growing up, but it's called profit first. So you make sure the company makes a profit, and then you add all the expenses on top of that, and that's your total job. And most times in our life, our profit is what's left over. And that often is zero, or it can be, depending on your spending habits. So I knew right there and then that I wanted to be a business owner, and I wanted to keep track of my money. And I have done that since I was 12 or 13 years old. I had my finances on paper, and I didn't know that people don't do this. I couldn't believe it. And so as I grew older, got to make more money, saving money was huge. And one thing that my parents taught us very strictly was give 10% to the church. But what they didn't show us, and they've changed some now, was being a giver the other 6 days of the week. And so I know you've probably already heard a lot about giving, but I just want to share a couple quick stories. I think, the 10% came from the Levites in the Old Testament, and a lot of us as Christians like to write that check, and then we're done. We're done giving for the week. And it's so easy. It's hard because it's a lot of money, but it's easy. But somebody encouraged me one time to just look in the rearview mirror every time you go through a drive-thru and just ask God if you should buy the food for those people. Or in your grocery line, every time look at the person in front of you and think, do you think they need a little help? And trust me, God will tell you when they need help. But when we first got married, we had a 5-year goal. And I was telling some of the guys earlier how I'm very optimistic. So my wife would say, well, it'd be cool to do this one day. I'm like, give me 3 years, it'll be done. So we thought it'd be cool to build our own house one day. So when we got married, I laid it all out to my wife, how we're going to start our own business. We're going to be debt-free by year 3, and at year 5, we're going to build our own house. Well, God has very interesting plans, like you said. But we worked really hard. And about year 3, I met a guy at a trade show. I met a guy's wife, actually, and he was a salesman for a residential company, and his wife was helping him with this booth. And she came over and she said, I'd like you to meet my husband. He does roof sales for residential, and I see you guys are a roofing company. So we talked, and here was a Christian guy. He was a salesman for a Christian company, and they did house roofs, and we did commercial roofs. So we started meeting once in a while, and he started giving my name out to people. And I was supposed to give his name out to residential homes, to people that called us for residential roofs. And at the end of the first year, we had done over $100,000 of the work from the leads from this guy. So I met with him, and I said, I'm going to write your company a check because you do marketing, you do branding, and we got all this free work from you guys. And he said, no. He said, I don't want anything. He said, if you want to do anything, you can write the check, whatever you want to write, to this mission that I'm part of in Uganda. He goes over to Uganda every single year. So we did this that year, and we did it the next year, and I kind of just took a percentage of what we spent on marketing, and I gave it to this mission. And so at year 5, the year we're going to build our house, we haven't even found land, and we have no house plans. We have some savings. We got our house paid off. We live in a very small modular ranch-style house. It's nice, but it's small. And we started saving for this new house we're going to build. But almost exactly 5 years, within a month or two, we went to the year-end appreciation for this Uganda mission. And there the board members shared a picture of a house that was built for a preacher or a pastor in Uganda. And he told me later that they used all of the funds that we had donated, and it covered this house. So we built a house in another country, the exact timeline that God had for us. And we had no idea what we were doing. We had no clue. But it was just a confirmation. We still haven't built the house, but we found land now. We're hoping to build in the next year or two. We're on the end of the second 5-year plan. So anyways, I wanted to share that with you because I think sometimes we put God in a box and we don't give near as much as we should of our time and money. And so we spend a lot of time talking about saving. But what's really hard to do is be giving when you have lots of debt or you don't have a large income. It is way harder. I found once we were debt-free that there was like just a burden off of our backs, and it was much, much easier to give. By the way, when I'm done, just stand up and because I forgot to look at the time. So I want to talk about that first. It's much easier to give when you have, I feel like a lot of my generation is actually very lazy. They're not always physically lazy, but it's easy for us to be like, I don't want to go to that financial training. I don't want to read that book. I don't want to go to that conference. Learn to be smarter and earn more money with your time. I feel like what you're doing here, this is great. You guys all showed up here because you want to learn. You have to always have a great attitude, and you always have to be willing to change. I hope I can be that way the rest of my life. I don't want to get to the point where I think I figured it out. I want to be willing to change. So don't be lazy you might not be lazy. You might be working 50 hours a week with your physical, but make sure you don't ever quit learning. Make sure you're not lazy on that part. So 3 things. This is actually kind of from the book called Why We Want You to Be Rich, and it's by Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump. You probably have heard of those people. They wrote a book together. It's one of my favorite books. It's kind of an interview setting where they ask them both how they feel about a certain topic, and then they will both answer. But in that book, they challenged us to find something that we enjoy doing. How much easier is it, Noah, when you get up and you're going to a job that you at least like somewhat, or you like the people you work with, or you like the mission of your job, right? It's much easier than if you get up and you go, oh man, another day, it's going to suck, And we've all been there, even at jobs that we like. It's a frustrating time on the project you're on, or the coworkers are just not fun to work with. But if you get up and you're like, I get another day. Another quick tip. Somebody gave me this tip. A lady that I got to work with as part of our business. She said every day before she gets out of bed, she thanks God for 3 random things in her life. And she said, do that every day. And she said, within a couple months, you'll do it. The first second that you're awake, you will think to yourself, what am I thankful for today? And just don't overthink it. Just 3 simple things in your life. It is amazing the crazy little tiny things that you will thank God for the first 30 seconds that you're awake. And do this. The first couple weeks, you're going to miss a couple weeks. But if you're married, remind your spouse, hey, what are you thankful for today? What did you thank God for today? Before you even get out of bed. It's crazy. Your day is so much better. So find something you enjoy doing. And it's never too late to change your career. I don't like jumping around. My generation loves to job hop a lot. I'm not all for that. Give something a couple years for sure. But number 2 is, so find something you love doing. And then number 2 is find a multiplier. So that looks a lot of different ways. Some of you invested your money in stocks. Some of you have bought real estate. For me, it's people. I got very lucky. I kind of fell into this thing. We do commercial roofing. And the company that we buy our products from is actually kind of designed like an affiliate marketing or network marketing. So we can help other roofing contractors build their roofing business. It's the only construction, anything to do with the construction industry that is modeled like that. So that's how my dad heard about commercial roofing. And that's how he taught me to do commercial roofing. And that's how I got to know Ambrose, was through a network marketing type construction conference. And so for me, that's how I found the multiplier, working with other young guys and gals and building their business. But for you, it might be something else. It might be real estate. But find a multiplier of some sorts, because you're probably going to run out of time at some point. And if you just spend all the money you make and you don't have a multiplier, I'm sure he has a multiplier if he's retired. And he has something, I'm sure. I don't know you at all, but I'm sure you have a multiplier. So find the multiplier. Leverage your relationships, the money that you've made. Leverage those things to find the multiplier. And then stay focused and don't invest your money in things you know nothing about. You know, as Americans, we are taught to put our money away where we can't see it. Why do they tell us that? So we don't spend it. But why do we want to put our money in places we don't see it? Why would you want to do that? Why not put it in something that you can see, that you can watch, you can keep your eye on, that you understand? We are so tempted with social media. Hey, did you see what XRP is doing today? Did you see what Bitcoin is doing today? Buy, or sell. And that's fine. I have some relatives that have made significant money in crypto, but they have spent literally hundreds of hours researching the history and how crypto works. I know nothing about it, so I'm not going to invest in it. So that'd be a thing I would really challenge you on. So I have a couple quotes I want to share that I'm going to wrap this up. There's a couple verses in Proverbs 22 is my favorite financial chapter by far, but it starts out with, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. And I might just take one extra minute on this. Very quickly, okay, if there's 2 towers in Minneapolis. They're 500 feet in the air, and there's a 2x6 that goes across. Let's make it a 2x12, okay, that goes across. Who in here would walk to the other side? You're 500 feet in the air, no safety harness, nothing on your back, okay? Who would walk across for $100,000? Raise your hands. You would try it? If you fall, you're dead. You're done.
How long is the board?
It's 50 feet across. How about $1 million? Okay, we got a couple people that you would actually try it. 500 feet in the air, $1 million. You'd try it. All right, we got 2 people in the room. Okay, now some of you don't have kids, but you have a mom or dad. How many of you would try walking across there if your kid was on the other side, and they're going to burn up if you don't go across? How about your parent if you don't have kids? Right? Okay? You wouldn't even consider, you would be like, I'm gone. If the only chance is that they live is you risking your life, you're all in. So we say that they're very important. The most important thing of our life is my 4-year-old. Okay? Now, my 4-year-old has a soccer game on Friday afternoon, and I have a business, and I get a call for a meeting right here, and if I go to this meeting, I can make an extra $20,000. Or I can go to the kids' soccer game. Most of us are going to go to the meeting to make $20,000 because the kids' soccer game doesn't matter. And this was me for a couple years. I bought into the hustle mindset of got to go make an extra buck. And what I want to challenge you guys on, if you claim these certain things are important, your faith and your family are so important, make sure they're aligned with how you're spending your time. That was very, very eye-opening for me, was to say, and then the decisions will be easy to spend time helping that older person at church. And so that's why Proverbs says, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold. Another thing, really good thing to remember is the rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. We have to remember that. If you see a poor person on the street, remember God made them. If you see a very wealthy person, they have a soul too, and God loves them just like the poor person. And then another couple money quotes that I like. Money is just like water. The person who has none, it's all he can think about. And the person who has plenty takes it for granted every single day. How many of us thank God for water today? Probably none of us, because we have unlimited water. We just turn the faucet on. But if you had no water for even 2 days, you wouldn't think about anything but I got to get clean water. And so that's often how money is as well. All right. So final quote, which is also from Proverbs 22. The sluggard says, there is a lion outside. I shall be killed in the streets. Don't forget to take a few risks and run out in the street even if there is a lion. Most times there is no lion. We just make an excuse. So make sure to take those risks. But thank you for your time. Sorry if I went over. Chris, I think 20 minutes is not a very good time. But anyways, thanks for your time and thanks for inviting me, Chris. It was an honor. I appreciate it.